Hi, and welcome everyone. I am so excited to be here with Allie Rigby, who is going to be a special guest teacher for us in a few weeks for our 2-session workshop on diving into poetry to enhance your prose. So I'd love to have you talk a little bit more about this, especially how you made the connection between poetry and prose, because I think some people think of those as, two polar opposites, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Thanks, Audrey. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for this course. And I think primarily I always tell folks I am a poet. I mainly write poetry. And part of this has come through my own learning of trying to understand the difference between prose and poetry and realizing that they actually are not opposites. They're often diametrically opposed, or people feel like they can't dabble or cross genre and blend and blur them, when in reality they influence each other. And we as poets, we use prose techniques all the time. And what I see more and more as I read prose are passages that, if you added some line breaks, would be poetry. And then we also have confusing categories like prose poems. So I think it's really fun to get into those nitty gritty distinctions. And I'm always really curious about how can we, if we are used to one genre and comfortable in it, how can we learn from other genres? And so we'll be using poetry and some specific poems by Ross Gay and Carl Phillips and Ada Limon to really look at this idea of when we dive in and use these really poetic devices and techniques on one particular focus, even one object, and give that object our full attention, how can that in itself be an act of devotion, an act of bearing witness? And by diving and focusing on that one thing, how can we make these ties and connections that are bigger than one thing, or even bigger than ourselves? So I'm always curious about how we, rather than trying to write about everything all at once all the time, how can we be really intentional with what we are paying attention to in our surroundings and use that to our advantage?
Oh, I love that. And it fits right into the title of the first session, which is Foundations of Poetry, Poetry as Attention, Attention as Love, which I really love. And I was thinking about how that singular focus is such an antidote to the barrage of input and information and just overload of stimuli that we get in our daily lives. So I am personally really looking forward to doing that deep and focused dive. And then the second session, so the first session is going to be November 5th, and then we have the second one on November 12th, a week apart. And the second one is 3 ways to use poetry to strengthen your prose, which sort of was speaking to what you were saying initially. So maybe you can just talk a little bit more about that aspect of it and what that's going to look like.
Absolutely. I view these 2 courses as cumulative. It's amazing if you can make both. It's not exclusive to only folks who can make both sessions.
And they will be recorded.
It will be recorded, yes. So you can catch up if you've missed the first one. Well, to answer your question, the first session, I love kind of clearing out the cobwebs, some of the perceptions of poetry, and just exposing folks to all the possibilities of poetry. I think it's one of the most exciting genres. Obviously, I am a little biased, but just in terms of what it can do, it's kind of a shapeshifter in itself, what can be defined as poetry. And in the second session, I really want folks to walk away with 3 really specific ways and exercises even that they can use and come back to again and again in their own writing to strengthen their prose. So we'll go into a little more writing, a little more collaborative feedback in that second session. And the first one will be a little more of a gentle introduction, but folks will still have poetry, writing time, and prompts from both sessions.
Great. I know you had mentioned to me that your teaching style is very discussion based and inclusive of the people in the room. So I assume that's going to be part of it as well.
Yes, absolutely. I love discussions. I myself, um, unless it's just one of the best lectures I've ever heard in my life, I know that it's hard to just stay in a room with a lecture for me. And I myself gravitate towards discussions. I feel like every person in the room has a plethora of experiences and expertise to draw from, and that it's just really, for me, it's more exciting to come to new terms and realizations together rather than me get on a stage and share everything I think and know. It's not only more interesting for me as the facilitator, my aim with discussion-based learnings is that we're also practicing active listening and opening our own minds to possibilities to truly try to come to a unique consensus based on the group we're currently with, um, and and feel safe voicing those ideas, including perhaps with poetry, concerns or questions about it, hesitations around it, especially if people aren't used to reading a lot of poetry or writing a lot of poetry. I want to honor and give space for everybody to share their ideas, share their wealth of knowledge.
Great. Well, you heard it here. You do not need to be a poet to attend this by any means. So it's really, I think it will be beneficial for people who write fiction, nonfiction, poetry, all basically write anything at all. And
Yeah.
we really hope that you will join us. Again, it's November 5th and November 12th, and you can find all the information in the Birth Your Truest Story community, and we'll provide some links here as well. So thanks a lot, Allie, and we'll see you in a couple weeks for the first
Yes.
session. All
Thanks,
right.
Audrey. See you
Yeah.
there.